Luka's journey, a tale of talent and triumph. In the heart of Slovenia, nestled among the rolling hills and lush valleys of Kranja, a young boy named Luka dreamed of football glory. At just 6 years old, he kicked a worn leather ball against the stone walls of his family's modest home, imagining himself scoring the winning goal in a packed stadium. The ball, patched and faded from countless games, was his constant companion, a symbol of his burgeoning passion. Luka's father, Marko, a former amateur footballer, recognized the spark in his son's eyes, a spark he'd once had himself before life's demands turned his own dreams to dust. Luka grew up in a tight-knit community where football was more than a sport, it was a way of life. The local pitch, a patchy field bordered by wildflowers, was where he honed his skills, outrunning and outmaneuvering boys twice his age. By the time he was 10, Luka's talent was undeniable. His lanky frame, already hinting at the towering height he'd later reach, gave him an edge. He could leap higher, strike harder, and move with a grace that belied his youth. Scouts from NK Domžale, a Slovenian club known for nurturing young talent, took notice. At 16, Luka signed with them, his first step toward a destiny that seemed written in the stars. The rise to Red Bull. Luka's time at Domžale was a whirlwind. His speed, strength, and uncanny ability to find the back of the net caught the attention of Red Bull Salzburg, a club with a reputation for transforming raw talent into world-class stars. In 2019, at just 16, Luka joined their academy, leaving behind the familiar comforts of Kranja for the bright lights of Austria. The transition wasn't easy. Salzburg was a world away from the small-town pitches of Slovenia. The training was grueling, the competition fierce, and the pressure immense. But Luka thrived on it. On loan at FC Liefering, Salzburg's reserve team, Luka exploded onto the scene. In 2 seasons, he scored 22 goals in 44 games, his lanky 6 feet 5 inches frame making him a nightmare for defenders. His first team debut for Salzburg came in January 2021, a moment he'd never forget. Stepping onto the pristine pitch of the Red Bull Arena, he felt the weight of thousands of eyes on him. The roar of the crowd was deafening, but Luka was calm, his focus razor-sharp. He didn't score that day, but his presence was felt, a glimpse of the star he was destined to become. Over the next 2 years, Luka helped Salzburg dominate the Austrian Bundesliga, winning 3 titles and an Austrian Cup. His goals were spectacular, long-range screamers, towering headers, and delicate chips that left goalkeepers rooted to the spot. But it was his work ethic that set him apart. After every match, he'd stay late, practicing free kicks under the floodlights, his breath visible in the chilly Austrian air. His teammates called him the Machine, not just for his physicality but for his relentless drive. In 2023, RB Leipzig came calling. The Bundesliga was a step up, a league where the world's best tested their mettle. Luka, now 20, signed a 5-year deal, though he'd remain with Salzburg for 1 more season to refine his craft. When he finally arrived in Leipzig, he hit the ground running. His first goals came in a 3-0 rout of Union Berlin, a brace that ended their 24-match unbeaten streak at home. The German press dubbed him Der Slowenische Ries, the Slovenian giant. At just 20 years old, he became the youngest player to score in 7 consecutive Bundesliga games, a record that echoed across Europe. The call of the Premier League. By the summer of 2025, Luka's name was on every major club's radar. Arsenal, Chelsea, and AC Milan had all courted him, but he chose to extend his contract with Leipzig until 2029, a decision driven by loyalty and a desire to grow. Yet, there was an understanding, an unwritten agreement with Leipzig's management: if the right offer came from an elite club, they wouldn't stand in his way. That summer, the football world buzzed with rumors, and one club's interest stood out above the rest: Manchester United. Luka first heard the news from his agent, Elvis Basanovic, over a crackling phone call. "They've made contact, Luka," Elvis said, his voice barely containing excitement. Informal, but serious. Manchester United want you. They're prioritizing you as their #1 striker target. Luka sat on the edge of his bed in his Leipzig apartment, staring at the city's skyline through the window. Manchester United. The Red Devils. Old Trafford. The names carried weight, a legacy of legends like Cantona, Rooney, and Ronaldo. It was a dream he'd harbored since childhood, watching grainy highlights of United's glory days on his father's old TV. But the interest wasn't without complications. Newcastle United were also in the race, their pursuit fueled by uncertainty over their star striker, Alexander Isak. Leipzig's asking price was steep, euro 80 million, possibly more, with add-ons and a sell-on clause. Manchester United's manager, Ruben Amorim, was under pressure to revive a team that had slumped to a dismal 15th in the Premier League the previous season. They'd already spent heavily on Bryan Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha, but their attack still lacked a true focal point. Luka, with his 39 goals in 87 appearances for Leipzig, was their answer. Luka's mind raced. Manchester United's interest wasn't new, they'd scouted him since he was 16, even coming close to signing him in 2022. But back then, he'd chosen Leipzig for its clear pathway to development. Now, at 22, he was a different player, stronger, smarter, and ready for the Premier League's intensity. Yet, doubts lingered. United's current strikers, Rasmus Højlund and Joshua Zirkzee, had struggled, scoring just 6 league goals combined last season. Would Luka's arrival push one of them out? And could he handle the pressure of being United's savior? The decision. Luka's days in Leipzig were a blur of training, matches, and media speculation. Every goal he scored, 6 in 9 games that season, fueled the transfer rumors. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends, family, and teammates. "You going to United, mate?" his Leipzig teammate Rydal Baku texted, half joking. Luka laughed it off, but the question gnawed at him. He loved Leipzig. The camaraderie, the city, the fans who chanted his name. But the Premier League was the pinnacle, and Manchester United was a club unlike any other. One evening, Luka sat down with his parents over a video call. His mother, Anna, who hailed from Bosnia, was practical. "You're young, Luka," she said, her voice steady. "You have time. Don't rush into something that doesn't feel right." His father, Marco, was more emotional. "This is Manchester United, son. The club I watched with you when you were a boy. If you feel ready, you take it." Luka nodded, his heart torn between loyalty and ambition. Elvis arranged a meeting with Christopher Vival, Manchester United's head of scouting and a former Leipzig executive who'd watched Luka's rise firsthand. Over coffee in a discreet Leipzig café, Vival laid out United's vision. "Ruben sees you as the centerpiece," he said. "Not just a striker, but a leader. You're 6 feet 5 inches, fast, clinical, and you work harder than anyone. You're built for the Premier League." Luka listened, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. Vival's words were compelling, but the price tag, euro 80 million, loomed large. United were reportedly considering a swap deal, possibly involving Højlund or one of their wingers like Garnacho or Sancho. Luka wasn't sure how he felt about that. He wanted to earn his place, not displace someone else. Newcastle's offer was tempting, too. They had Champions League football, something United couldn't offer. But Luka's heart leaned toward Old Trafford. He'd grown up idolizing United's attacking flair, their never-say-die spirit. And Vival's connection to Leipzig gave him confidence that United's interest was genuine, not just a publicity stunt. The turning point came during a Bundesliga match against Bayern Munich. Leipzig were struggling, down 2-0 at halftime. The Red Bull Arena was tense, the fans restless. Luka, who'd been quiet in the first half, felt the weight of expectation. As he sat in the locker room, his coach's words echoed, "You're our spark, Luka. Ignite us. In the 60th minute, he did just that. A long ball from the back found him on the edge of the box. He controlled it with one touch, spun past Dayat Upamecano, and rifled a shot into the top corner. The stadium erupted. 10 minutes later, he headed in a corner, leveling the score. Leipzig pushed for a winner, but the match ended 2-2. Luka's performance was a statement. He was ready for the biggest stage. After the game, as he walked off the pitch, a Leipzig fan held up a sign, "Luka, stay our giant." He smiled, but his mind was elsewhere. That night, he called Elvis. "I want to talk to United," he said. "Let's see what they're offering." The negotiations began in earnest. United's initial approach was cautious, probing Leipzig's demands. The €80 million valuation was a hurdle, but United's financial team was working on player sales to balance the books. Alejandro Garnacho and Jadon Sancho were rumored to be on the chopping block, though Luka stayed out of those discussions. His focus was on the pitch. The dream becomes reality. By late July 2025, the deal was taking shape. Manchester United's informal contact had turned into formal talks. Leipzig, true to their word, were open to negotiations, especially with Vival's influence smoothing the way. The fee was settled at €75 million plus €5 million in add-ons, with a 10% sell-on clause. Luka's agent confirmed the personal terms, a 5-year contract, with an option for a 6th, and a salary that reflected his status as United's marquee signing. The announcement came on August 1, 2025, just before the transfer window's final push. Manchester United's social media exploded with a video of Luka's highlights, goals, assists, and bone-crunching tackles, set to a pulsing soundtrack. The caption read, "Welcome to Old Trafford, Benjamin Šeško." Fans flooded X with excitement, some calling him the next Haaland, others simply Luka the legend. Luka, watching from his Leipzig apartment, felt a mix of pride and nerves. This was it, the moment he'd dreamed of. His first day at United's Carrington training ground was surreal. Ruben Amorim greeted him with a firm handshake and a smile. "You're our man, Luka," he said. "Let's make history." Training with his new teammates, Mbeumo, Cunha, Bruno Fernandes, was intense but exhilarating. Luka's height and physicality gave United's attack a new dimension. In his first friendly, a pre-season clash against Liverpool, he scored a towering header, silencing the Anfield crowd. The Premier League was his new home, and he was ready to conquer it. The legacy begins. Luka's first season at Manchester United was a roller coaster. The Premier League was faster, more physical, and more unforgiving than the Bundesliga. Defenders like Virgil van Dijk and William Saliba tested him, but Luka held his own. His first competitive goal came against Tottenham, a curling effort from 20 yards that sparked wild celebrations at Old Trafford. By mid-season, he'd scored 12 goals in 18 games, earning comparisons to United's great strikers of the past. Off the pitch, Luka remained grounded. He called his parents after every match, win or lose. He visited Kronia during the international break, playing pickup games with local kids on the same pitch where he'd started. The Premier League spotlight was intense, but Luka's focus never wavered. He was no longer just a Slovenian kid with a dream, he was Manchester United's number 9, a symbol of hope for a club desperate to reclaim its glory. As the 2025-26 season unfolded, Luka's journey was just beginning. The boy from Kronia had become a man, a star, and a legend in the making. Old Trafford chanted his name, and the world watched in awe. Luka, the Slovenian giant, was exactly where he belonged.